Welcome back to another lesson or episode or video of Finding Freedom. Now, most people would say quit, but in the Marines we say never quit and never give up. Why is that? Well, I have no idea, but if you ever went around and asked an FBI agent where they get trained, sometimes they may say Quantico, and sometimes they get trained by Marines, which is weird, I know, but aren't they supposed to be law enforcement? Interesting. So let's get into some jargon or vocabulary. What does it mean to commit a transgression? Well, it means to, break orders, conduct, law, etc., so on and so forth. You have transgressed, right? You stepped over too many lines, etc., because you wanted to get your way, right? And then, of course, this could be deemed as either abuse, depending on the tactics that were utilized. Then, of course, you have terror, meaning to instill fear, or provocateur, meaning that you are a person that is provoking an action through speech or words. So these all fall underneath transgressions, because if you're in the know, then you know, which is the acronym all the kids are saying these days on, social media, right? So let's get into this, right? Because some people would be like, oh, well, you could expel his ass. Well, in Harry Potter, you have Expelliarmus, which will disarm anybody holding a wand, so on and so forth. If you were to expel somebody, well, then that means they would what? Get kicked out of school for a time period, etc., so on and so forth. Avada Kedavra, whatever the case may be, right? And curse or whatever, or a spell that shouldn't be said. Ooh, kill him. Oh, let's rip his head off. Let's do this. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about this. Blah 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 blah. But yet you want to be treated fairly, want peace, you want to be treated as equals, but you don't mind the shit that comes out of your mouth because, well, once it comes out, you don't like it when people say something back to defend themselves. Last time I checked, that's covered underneath speech. But if you can't even think of something without somebody getting fucking offended, well, then how the hell are you going to speak to somebody when they offend you, right? You can do one or two things. If they keep provoking you, right, then you can stand up for yourself, right? Or you can utilize words to respond in kind, right? Or you can also educate them, right? Take them to a public law library, which many people haven't gone to, which is probably why there's so many people getting into trouble, going to prison, jail, or etc., right? Peanut butter jelly, right? What does Cardi B say? This booty will have your like peanut butter or something like that. Why is that? I don't know. Are peanuts hard to digest? I don't know. Think about it, right? What's greed but another form of gluttony, right? It's just a different terminology, right? Now, why am I stating all this? Because the same vocabulary is also used within the court of law. Also, if you go to a public law library, there's something called the Black's Law Dictionary. Why is it called that? I don't know. But if you speak Ebonics, then you could understand this, right? Because you're not hooked on phonics. And for those of you old timers out there, you know what that is. So, why is it that people are not wanting to improve, but then complain about all the things that they keep pushing and not working together towards? That's the misunderstanding, right? And then, of course, they get told a story. And if you have deep fake videos and other things like that that get altered and edited with AI and large language models, then you can be misinterpreting a couple things because of how things can get edited on the fly, right? And then, of course, you have other areas, right? Then you have other palabras, words, right? Y si tú quieres entender algo, right? Think of Babel. Why did Babel happen, right? Well, you have the app Babel, like Rosetta Stone. But in history, it was Rosetta Stone that helped them translate so many languages, like Babel, right? So are someone speaking in tongues? Well, what does that mean? Are they going la 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 la, and you don't know what they're saying, and you want to know what they're saying because you're so fucking curious to maintain your control and power and dominance over somebody that you want to go ahead and manipulate them with words? I mean, think about it. If music is like a form of hypnosis, couldn't you put someone underneath hypnosis who knows this? That's a form of poetry. Now, hip hop and rap artists are like aggressive poets. And you've seen the Dead Poet Society, I hope. Remember, there was a scene in that movie where he was like, you know what, rip out the first page. And everybody was like, why? They were so confused, right? And it was because he was not teaching within the similar or structured architecture in which that school developed in order to have people move about in a particular fashion, right? So what about Netflix, the TV show Uglies, right? It talks about people getting modifications to become more beautiful, right? Beautification project, whatever, right? But what happens if people don't want that to happen? See, if beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and beauty, or what is deemed as such, is valued more. See, I was at Taco Bell with this little kid, super awesome, named Jacob. And I said, is that an expensive car or a cheap car? And he said, it's an expensive car. I said, why? He said, because it looks expensive. And he was right. It was an expensive car. I don't know if it was German or not, but it was expensive. Now, I used to have an Audi. I named her Olivia. She was highly expensive when it came to repair costs, but it was able to afford me to do other things like Uber Black at the time before, things got a little bit easier and everybody was able to jump on the stuff that I was actually researching on a computer. Such as like times and everything like that. Where's the traffic going to be? So instead of doing their homework, they already did it for you, and now it makes life easier. Yes or yes? Because back in the day, you had to look stuff up. You had to study the times. You had to go online. You had to go to the airport. How many flights are coming in? Take notes, write it down, so on and so forth, etc. And then people would wonder how I was making money, so on and so forth. And then they make the game harder because, well, people want to maintain their status, etc. You got people running around because they've seen the TV show Burn Notice, so now they're saying, oh, I'm trying not to get burnt. But you could barely make toast without burning it, right? Now, what's interesting is that I talk about the military a lot. I love all the branches. And there was somebody that said, oh, but Marine Corps is spelled like corpse, right? And then I remember my little brother, CJ, Christian James, right? He wanted to join the military, not only because he played COD or Call of Duty, but he said he wanted to go to the Marines like myself. And my father quickly looked at me and him and said, they get the chance to die first. And he said, well, who gets to die second? I'll join them. And I just laughed for a second, right? Because, if you study science, you have the crust, the mantle, and the core. And if you don't protect the core, right, if you ever seen that movie, right, where they go to restart the shift within the center of the earth or close to it, so that the earth doesn't pass away or die, which sustains everybody that resides upon it, well, then what is it that the Marines actually protect? I don't know. But because of that, he got fearful, right? And because of that, well, he changed his mind very quickly. Who knows? He may go to the Army. He may go to the Navy. He may go to the Air Force, Space Force, whatever the case may be, unless he chooses a different path or go to college, etc., university, yada, yada. However, he would also need to understand that there's jargon, terminology, etc., that is in and deemed within every industry, parts of government, law enforcement, whatever. And I remember we were talking amongst family members, and somebody heard me speak, and they thought that I was using taboo language. So I'll let you in on a little secret. If somebody is called a hoe, right? Well, if you've seen Dr. Seuss, he actually pulls up a gardening tool, right? And a hoe is used to dig. So why are they digging for information like a gold digger would, right? Or so on and so forth, right? It's a cheap tool that can be utilized to dig for information, a garden, or whatever the case may be. Now she said, what's the difference between that and an escort? I said, an escort's like a business partner or a wing person. That's why they get paid more. They're also more knowledgeable. They're not digging for information. They understand the job at hand, or as they say now, they understood the assignment, and that's why they also get paid more. Now let's round robin back to Marine Corps. Why is it said that way when it's spelled corpse? Because the S is silent and some people just don't know how to shut the fuck up. And then when somebody like one of us opens our mouth, they get worried. Oh, you don't know where you're going. You don't know what you're doing. I don't think you did this. I don't think you did that. And they try to play the psychological ego or super ego or id game, right? So on and so forth. And it's quite fascinating, right? Because most people will do that and utilize that already having a strategic advantage. Let's say you have a mental health disorder that people diagnosed as, let's say, being manic. So if you get upset or sound like a drill instructor or drill sergeant, well, then they are transgressing, right? Or not. Because yes, law enforcement can lie, just like undercover police officers can lie and other law enforcement can lie. If you haven't seen the video with Diary of a CEO, there's a guy on there that was a former Secret Service, so on and so forth, and he even states that. So if they're allowed to lie, well then who's telling the truth? Who signed off on it? And then of course, do they even know why they're in the position that they're in? Are they guarding secrets? Are they actual people in those positions? Do they play a particular role like a cog in a wheel? As I stated in my tax video, that there'll be a part 2. Don't worry about that. I mean, we have to analyze this carefully because most people will say, oh, he thinks he's helping us, but we're really helping him. Well, if I learn from you and you learn from me and I start hearing terminology that I was using, like let's say the word doctor, and somebody says that because let's say ChatGPT told me, and I hear somebody say that or state that, well, then where did you get that information from? Now, if you remember the tax video, I remember stating that companies can make money from selling and deleting data, right? There's that whole thing, delete me, right? And what is the game that kids like to play? Oh, I bet I could get this person to say this word, right? And if you're not supposed to take God's name in vain, and apparently or allegedly God's in everybody, and therefore by which you're not supposed to speak badly upon yourself or others, then if they could get you to say those things, whether it's in a song, etc., well, then it's like a affirmation, whether it's positive or negative, right? Can you affirm this? Can you confirm this? Now, mind you, I'm using English right now, pero si yo quiere, yo puedo entender todo palabra que tú necesitas que yo, y yo puedo usar todo. Or is that everything? Was it todo or todo? I mean, you really have to understand what people are saying. And if you don't understand what people are saying, it's like the complexities of a chicken and an egg, right? Could be used as a magic trick, right? Does the B come before the P? Well, that depends. Why do you separate ammunition from weaponry, right? Why? Right? Why do you separate certain people from abusive ones? Why do you put abusive ones behind bars so they can learn how to get along together, right? Or maybe they got bars and they want to go ahead and spit some poetry. I don't know. But there's a reason for the First Amendment, and it's because of the fact that if people aren't able to utilize speech and they get pressured and put into a confined space like a rat or somebody trapped in a corner, so on and so forth, which has been done to me several times, right, to see what would happen, right, then what are the grooming standards? Who's grooming whom, right? Who are the people that are doing it? Because initially they're really just telling on themselves and exposing themselves for whom they are, the positions that they hold, and the people that they actually work for that are getting you to do monotonous things, to act like good little boys and girls. Now, if you can't use one, eventually 2 is going to be utilized. And if you don't know what that means, look at everything that's happening in society now. Go out in town. Listen to people's words, right? Look at the person that's instigating something. When somebody's just quiet, ordering a drink, trying to provoke an action, or meaning, if they're doing such, ask yourself a handful of questions. Do they know this person? Does this person not look like them? Do they not like the way they dress? Why are they so offended? Do they know something? And if this person does do something, they'll still get in trouble because that's a form of entrapment, blackmail, or, well, a tactic from espionage, is it not? or a tactic from law enforcement. So who's the bad person in the room and who's the good one that is just trying to enjoy life? Be happy. Bob Marley sang that, but yet people have a problem with that too. It's so fascinating and interesting. Most doctors will do stuff for a paycheck. Others will do stuff without one. You should watch this TV show on Netflix called The Resident, right? He's a former Marine, goes into the hospital as a doctor, etc. His father, had to step in at one point because he was catching a lot of people doing stuff illegally that they were not supposed to be doing. And one of the things he did was he addressed another doctor in the room a certain way. And he tried to say, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. All right? We're here to help and heal people, not to drain their pockets, not to get upset when they actually do something right, like work out, go to the gym, take a holistic approach, whatever that may be. And then, of course, there was a surgeon that messed up, like a psychiatrist that says, uh-oh, right? And then they tried to cover him, etc. He gets reprimanded. You should watch that. It's in the first episode, right? And then, of course, eventually the business, the hospital, has to go underneath redevelopment, meaning people had to either get fired, lose their positions, or get rearranged. And a chairman of the board even stepped in because the banks had to send them in. Because if the bank has money attached to the hospital, similar to a mortgage, just like if your child goes out in public and does something that's under a certain age, you are held responsible. And if you don't understand that, then you should go to a library, go online, utilize something, ask to understand, instead of trying to instigate to cause a reaction. Because just like officers wear a body cam, people have cell phones now, and they can record everything that's going on in the room, even if the room itself has cameras and those are being altered or deleted or erased or something is being tampered with. What do you think is faster? Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, the connection that moves through a fiber optic cable, or the way you treat somebody in real time? So remember that. What is a transgression? Look that definition up, right? Then look up the word and terminology of finagling, right? Because the word is kind of like a transgression, but people will finagle, make bullshit up in order to get by on their finances, right? And accountants could inform you on this, right? So go ahead, go out, discover your freedom, utilize what's being taught and pay it forward. This is why I ask people to like and hit share. I don't need to make money from this. I can do something else if they let me, right? But remember, Da Vinci wasn't allowed to do certain things. They only paid him for artwork until war came, and then they started to pay him for other stuff like the machinery and inventions. Study your history, study life, study people, species, and everything around you, and maybe you'll live in less strife. Talk to you guys later.